Hi everyone, just another quick video on a build that may be useful to you. Steve Ramsey, who has a channel called Woodworking for Mere Mortals, built a tool cart out of plywood. And I was interested in making one as well, but instead of using plywood, which can get kind of expensive, I decided to make mine out of pallet wood. And I'm not going to go through a full build video, but I'm going to give you some tips and tricks from my experience of trying to recreate his tool or lumber cart rather out of plywood. The first thing you have to know is that the plywood you get off of pallets, although free, is not very good in terms of high quality wood. The pallet wood is less dense. There are air pockets in it to save on cost of wood. And so it makes it more difficult to work with. It's not as straight. Of course, it'll be worn and tattered and maybe out of shape. Now, when I was looking for pallet wood that was plywood, there were several types of pallet wood that have been found. This is a piece of OSB that came off of a pallet. Again, kind of sort of tattered edges, not very shape, not very high quality or dense wood. So it can be challenging to work with. You do find fairly large pieces. You have to do the work to get the nails out. And I noticed that if you take the piece off intact, the edges and the trim don't have holes and they stay intact better. And then my first piece of advice is I would actually make the pallet cart the size of a single sheet of pallet plywood. So, typically there would be a base to this. I've taken that off, but you can use a couple of these pieces for the sides or the main structure of the lumber cart.
Okay.
This is the general shape of the lumber cart. It has an angled side on the back, which holds big sheets of plywood. One of the key things that I found is that in the original lumber cart that Steve Ramsey built, he used dados to sort of line up the plywood. You can't really do that. So what you do is you take slats from your pallets and lay them along your plywood or your flat pieces and use that to hold up your plywood pieces and something to brace again. Use a lot of glue and some nails and screws. As for the wheels, I took a Harbor Freight moving cart, and I think there's other videos on there. You can take them apart and remove the casters. With a coupon, you can get this moving cart for less than $8, and then you get 4 caster wheels that you can use for your lumber carts. And this just shows you the parts that are used to put it together. I took the wheels off, and then I tried to put them on, but the pallet wood was not dense enough to hold the wheels, so what I ended up doing was putting them back on, just cutting the cart into 4 pieces, and then gluing the whole piece of the wheel with the wood from the cart onto the pallet. In addition, you can see I put some extra pallets along the bottom edges of the bottom piece of plywood to add additional support for the entire pallet cart, and I would recommend this as well. So once you get the cart together with the slats and the big sheets of plywood, the back piece you put at an angle, again, using your slats or an extra set of slats to put that angle in there. And you can put your large pieces of plywood onto the back part. You can use smaller pieces of plywood you get from pallets for the actual longer boards. You make little cubbies, which you can load them up. I recommend that you look at Steve Ramsey's original video just so you can get an idea of what this should look like if you use sort of regular plywood and you're willing to splurge for that. There's a shelf at top where I can just store little scraps of wood as well. And finally, the middle compartment is kind of nice for the sort of big end pieces of pallets that are left over or pallets that you've partially sort of deconstructed. The cart actually holds quite a bit of wood, so I suggest putting some good casters on there if you want to move it around. and it's nice to just organize your wood in an inexpensive way. I put some additional touches in here. I made a little clamp rack to hang all my Harbor Freight wood clamps. These are these pinch clamps. You can just sort of put them on one of the pallet edges. But then the F clamps, I made a special rack, and there's a lot of videos on how to make the F clamp rack. If you have any questions, please just leave a comment and I'll try to get back to you. It was a lot of fun to build. I think some of the best advice I can give is be flexible. You know, you may have certain plans on how you want to build it after you measure out all your plywood and so forth, but you know, you have to sort of accommodate the quality of the plywood, and it's not going to do the things you want real plywood to do. But remember, it's free from pallets. Probably another tip advice I would give is when you're deconstructing the pallets, there are several methods to do this. I think you have to be a little bit more careful with the pallets that you find that have sort of flat sheets of plywood on them, because again, I said they're a little bit frailer and not as dense, and so they tend to break apart. So you just may want to come up with a method of either cutting the nails using a Sawzall, or there are other methods that are described on YouTube as well. Put a little magnetic strip in the front for some tools. Keep a hammer and a pry bar there when I want to take apart other pallets. But seems to work well. Not as pretty as Steve Ramsey's, but the cost was practically nothing because all the wood was free. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, again, leave some comments. Please subscribe. I'll put some more videos on Harbor Freight, pallet woodworking, and cheap woodworking in general.